Okay, so we talking a lot about new knowledge here, and we are now moving sort of into sharing and sort of discussion. I would like to invite the chairs, Ellie, who did the geography, myself, who did the historical, policy, Kalok, to essentially start our discussion. So what I'm going to do is ask them each in 2 minutes to just say the key highlights from their session. Then we will open the whole thing for questions and answer, which is going to lead us to lots of drinks later. So the whole thing is just into the drinks notes. So let's start with you, Ellie.
Well, actually, I came up with more questions than answers, and that's the geography covers not only my session, so to speak, but also the other ones, because I picked up here. Well, let's see. Taiwan we had Israel, we had Silicon Valley, kind of. China. Then later on we heard about Singapore just now, so I can add this to the geography, if I may. We heard from Robin about Vietnam, Estonia, and Jamaica, so I picked up some notes about all of that. And the question that comes out of that is, first of all, are these competitors or complementary? Is Jamaica come at the expense of Chile that she mentioned or not? Now, of course, one answer is, let's be specific. Again, I put Silicon Valley out is simply because let's agree we cannot compete with Silicon Valley. So among all the others, to what extent they are indeed competing or not? Now, one answer would be, if you really go and apply to the hardcore competence of each country, presumably you have an advantage. So if it's cyber, maybe Israel. If it is semiconductors, we heard about Taiwan. But not every country has something which is as distinguished as I cannot think about Jamaica, music aside, what is so specific about that, even Estonia. Second is what you do about the others. Yet to be measured, what is the percentage of cyber in Israel? I don't think it's very high compared to all what we do there in terms of technology. Same goes for Singapore, perhaps. So this is the first question. And again, sorry, I cannot summarize. I'm just raising issues. The other one, the other point I would like to raise is, to what extent countries, success of them, as was pointed out a little bit, is transitionally or permanent? Because, we heard that the ultimate goal many times is to list. Many times you list in the US. You're being sold to multinationals. And even at the stage of the startup, unless it becomes a unicorn, and except for China and the US, I don't know where else you can generate unicorns realistically, then presumably, if they are successful, they may well defect and go elsewhere. So all these issues about countries and geographies is still mystifying to me. Investors are international, technologies are international, people are movable, exit is international. What is left to be as a country? Language a little bit, but even this is not an issue. I can go on, but in the interest of time, I will just say last sentence. And what is, again, not quite the geography, but a point I would like to make, what is the role of the VC? Seems to be declining in all of these. And again, to what extent the government, the VC world, as well as the alternative funding of accelerators, etc., are they intersected and are they the same in the different geographies? Does it make a difference that China is so much influenced by government and Singapore maybe also, or I don't know, and Jamaica is not? To me, from academic perspective, there are more questions than answers.
Excellent. Kalok, please, your insights.
Maybe I can use this. Right. I think that my session is about the role of the government, whether the government has any role in promoting the venture capital? And I think the answer is definitely yes. I think that as I can really see from both speakers in my session. I mean, first that I think for Robin, I think that she have really give a very good overview of what that the government can do or should do, and also what are the elements that they can really help. I mean, that's of course there are really the 8 categories, like on the regulation, infrastructure, getting talents, providing capital market access, the education and training, etc. Now, of course, that when I look at that, I think that this is really what the government should do anyhow, providing a really, I mean, business-friendly environment, providing efficient economy, and I think that that's really no issue about that. Of course, that in particular, I think that this is something that for venture policy, for venture capital, I think this is really more essential when she also mentioned about the clusters, because it's very about that getting the people to come together, and also on this funding and taxation, and that providing a tax break, and also providing, I mean, that the co-investing the value. And I think that, of course, this is the part that I think that the government, especially since I'm in Hong Kong, I mean, this is always the part that the government needs to really struggle. How much a tax break, I mean, should we provide? I mean, just like that Robin also mentioned, we should not concede the tax part, the tax revenues too early. And also in terms of co-investing, I mean, then if you really make the investment into the venture, into this startup, and therefore that you need to provide a good justification, right? Why are we getting a startup? Why not getting into bigger companies, right? You want to attract the bigger companies. And then I think this is really the theory part. And of course, that people can always answer, because that, well, I mean, that you think about that the startups can really provide more innovation. I mean, that they can also have a faster growth. I mean, of course, that these are something that certainly that you can justify. Now, for the second speaker, that Martha, I think that she should put given a very good summary of the Hong Kong ecosystem. I think that exactly illustrates that the government can have a role, because that I think that she give a very good summary of the Hong Kong ecosystem. In fact, that Hong Kong will benefit from a lot of things, right? We have a very good infrastructure, efficient market, very low tax, but yet that we can see that we do not really have the ecosystem. But in fact, but instead we have this vicious cycle. We cannot really, how that we can break out. I mean, so this is exactly the part that the government really need to really intervene and then come in, and then whether it's the co-investing, whether that it is really for other creation of the cluster, right? I mean, that these are the things, some of the things the government can really have a role in breaking out of this vicious cycle. Maybe I'll stop here.
I'm going to use the hat now of the chair of the history section, which Eli gave us an amazing discussion. And I just want to say shortly that I think from a research point of view, we have a lot of more work in order to make the database that we have accessible to as many people as possible. Because I think Mani said correctly, every line in the 160 lines that we have is a story, is a beginning of something that can be a trend, that can be something that is relevant for other places. So I think we have a lot of work in terms of actually taking the work that we have done in the history of venture and enabling other researchers, other practitioners to touch upon it, and then actually use that to make their own decisions. So that was the short summary for the history work, and I highly encourage all of you to actually take a look at our database so you can use it further.
Yep, thank you. So basically, venture capital is very much like football. And what you want to be is Real Madrid. You want to have a stadium that has close to 100,000 people. You want to have the best talent possible. And today, Real Madrid is Silicon Valley. But if we go there and we look at the nationalities who are actually playing on our team, they're from all over the world. Why are they not in their own countries? Why? And that is what my panel was trying to touch on. And my panel was looking at ways that we could bring the talent to different places, which is what you just mentioned in terms of some of the regionality. So how many of Silicon Valley's talent, not CEOs of companies, but talent, are Asian? And how can we get them to come to Hong Kong or Shanghai or Beijing? How? And that's the question we need to ask. Do we need to have corporate involvement to create an ecosystem? Do we need to have government policy to create an ecosystem? Do universities have to create a structure to attract that talent? And so, a little bit of the talent doesn't do the university scene, but we want the talent to be here in an environment in which it's thriving. And so we touched on different ways that maybe we can attract somebody, listed markets that are being formed, but whether they work or not, or crowdfunding, it isn't dealing with the essence of the problem, is how do we get the talent to come here, back home, to do what it does best and make the world a smaller place. And I think my panel did a very good job with Tim and Jeff to do that. They can leave because the global experience is a good one, Ellie. But I think my panel did a very good job showing how Singapore was trying to make an effort to address this, but even then, Jeff is limited by the funding that he can work with. And Tim touched very well on probably the only source that we can work with is corporate, but then they have agendas. And is the agenda necessarily that of really being a place of innovation, right? And that's the essence. Thank you.
Excellent. And with that, I want to open the discussion for the floor and see if you have any questions or insights that you want to share with us. Yes, please. You are.
I'm from Israel, and I'm a venture capitalist, and the more we think about this, and to the geographical comments, there is one Silicon Valley, and anybody else is a distant second or third or what have you. So how do you compete in this space? I mean, the US has been extremely effective in bringing talent from around the world. You've seen that. So I've been looking really at two strategies. You want to be very simplistic. One is a sense of meaning, and that is come home, make your previous home better. Be a hero at home, which you will never be in the valley kind of thing. And that seems to work. Go back home before your kids start dating local people and they sort of move off to another culture. No, that works. That works. It's a genuine strategy. And the other one is acknowledging the fact that for governments, VC is a tool, but where you don't have an alignment. I want to raise up something that hasn't been discussed here. We assume that government and VCs work together and are somehow aligned. I want to raise the issue that they are less aligned than ever before. And the reason is very simple. If I'm a venture capitalist, I want to invest in a software company that will be a unicorn. So the ultimate success is like WhatsApp, 55 people get sold for $19 billion. What does that do for the economy? Zilch. Now, the interesting part is, if I'm the government, I don't care about the VC successes. I care about the failures because they employ more people than the successes. So actually, as a government, I should think up of a scheme to fund the VCs to do what they do, but will generate for me the return. I, as a government, see tax money and see employment much ahead of any VC. The VCs wait until the end, until the exit. They wait 10 years. I get it immediately. So my real cost of capital is much lower. So the other part in my mind, as I look at it, to competing with this world, is to create the kind of schemes that will indeed attract talent because they underwrite risk, because they give you better access to capital, because they will give you a lot of things, and in return they will get what they really need, which is to create a technology subclass in society or the kind of high quality jobs that will jumpstart the economy. Other than that, I don't think there's a model that works very well.
Let me say something to you. Yozma.
Sure. Well, that's one case.
That was genius.
It was. Yeah.
You want to share with the crowd what Yozma, not what it is today, but what it was when it was founded by the government. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I think we mentioned a bit of that earlier. The idea was there was no VC industry, so the government wanted VC industry. They said they will participate in a small number of new venture capital funds, provided that they bring in high quality VC management from the outside, and the government would basically subsidize the venture capital, which means if it loses some money, it will write the check, and if it makes money, it will sell its share to the VCs for a subsidy. And that created the whole VC community.
And
by the way, the financial results is $100 million invested in the program, created $10 billion for the economy.
You see
and
how
that's
beautiful that
precisely
is?
my point.
And not all those, because Yozma was, I forget, 20 firms, 15 firms, right? And
yeah, like 10 firms, yeah.
But 10, yeah, I know, but they weren't also, they were not all supposed to be with foreign, right? The-
were also.
Oh, they were all
Yeah,
with
yeah,
foreign,
yeah.
but there was also a program to then have some domestic. So there was an infrastructure
Right.
that was formed. But that's so simple, you see?
But that is precisely my point, that this is a use me, use you kind of relationship. So all I'm saying is, I'll give you another example. What I'm saying is the VCs are moving away from that because they look less at portfolios and they look at having unicorns. And I'm saying again, government doesn't care about unicorns or shouldn't. Another example, if I'm the government, I would like to subsidize a VC who will invest in hardware companies more than in software companies because that creates more jobs. I have yet to look at the government that's done that, although all of them acknowledge that. The first one is the Israeli government, which historically has been good. And we have no manufacturing base in Israel. So I'm saying, give twice the amount of money per capita to somebody who's in the hardware business. You don't see that. But all I'm saying is there isn't an alignment of goals. There's an alignment of, I'll give you money so that you can do something that's better for me. And if you can generate the returns or I'll help you generate the returns, that's fine. But the ultimate goal is not the
I
same.
want to add one sentence before I open again, because I'm interested in the audience opinion, because we talked too much. One of the interesting things that Yoav is saying stems from globalization. Because today, at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to do something, you can actually go to a VC offline. You can go to other places, get the money. You can move yourself, and lots of people will accept you. And if you're a software company, your entire infrastructure is on Amazon or in parallel things. So that type of systems really is I would call it a universe to its own. Last year, in a previous meeting like that, we stepped upon the business of deep innovation, which Eli touched upon. Deep innovation has to do with research and practice and companies that are actually not in the space of IT, not in the space of cyber. So this is like an early edition of something that is going to come up next year, not that I'm selling anything here, that talks about deep innovation. It is these kinds of ideas that are interesting for us as a research center, because what we do, we look at something, we look deeply at it, and we generate materials, hopefully to share with other people, and then talk to Moose, and Moose talks to the whole world, and then sells that idea. So that's our goal.
Yesha, I know who's supposed to speak, to ask the audience.
No,
I'll just say last
sentence.
but it's really combining what you just said, the point of view of, and actually a conversation over lunch that I had with Yael. And it has to do with deep innovation area, because the core way to maintain technology, startups, successful companies within your own country is in the area of the hard sciences. It's very, very difficult to do it in media, because media in New York is where your son is, people can move there, and it's very transferable. We have seen many Israeli companies that are in the area of applications. They moved the CEO and 2 more guys to the US. Now they are American. It's a game. I think people, and certainly I drove from the experience of universities, to attract professors, it's not the salary usually. It's the research environment that you provide them. It's the laboratory that you provide them. Same applies. If you create here a cluster where both spouses can find a job within this, and they are not necessarily in the same field, if there are proper laboratories, as Yael said there before, if you are in biotech, there are enough pharma companies to run, drug discovery and FDA test. That will keep the companies in the country. There is no shortcuts, and that takes money. And that takes actually the large corporations to be embedded. Without the large corporations in this area, the startups will not succeed. Sorry for...
Anything else, guys? Interesting comments, ideas? Yes, please. Wait.
Because today I hear the
My name
two.
is?
Yeah, I'm Hai Tian from PolyU. Yeah, I'm academics. So today I hear that actually 2 drivers of innovation. One is science, the technology. The other is the market. I think that even in our globalized world, the talent still wants to be closer to either the technology, like Silicon Valley, or the market, like China. So my comments or the question is, so for example, we heard that Hong Kong is going to set up this new bureau. So this bureau, I want to know that which country's model actually is Hong Kong is trying to follow. Is it like, so to what extent Hong Kong can learn from the Israel experience of like, because Yesha, you just mentioned that when Hong Kong most failed, okay, those successful ones, they raise more funds, they move to elsewhere. So how to retain these,
So let
yeah.
me tell you my very, very short answer, and I actually already said that many, many times, including to the right people. So to the answer, what Hong Kong can learn from Israel? Nothing. Zero. Now, you ask, how can it, really literally, everything that worked in Israel will never work here. Will never. So that's the right way to think about it. Now, if you double click on it, really the answer is a little bit more complex, because essentially you say, okay, understand the components of what happened, ask yourself whether you have that component, and actually build something that is completely different and matches this area. It has to match this area. And it will be completely different. It's not going to be Silicon Valley. It's not going to be Israel. It's not going to be Shenzhen, by the way. It's going to be an Hong Kong thing. And in order to do that, you need decision making. You need leadership. And that's the reason I think the Bureau is such an important thing. I said to Nick, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it. Just do something. It's like the government here just sleeping. Right? You have some important people here. Go ahead, Kalok, say what you want to say.
I will say something. I don't know what that Nick is going to do. Probably we'll find out. But I perfectly agree. I mean that Hong Kong is quite different. I'm not sure that what we really learn from the other countries can be applied. Hong Kong has its own advantage, but it also has its own problem. Certainly that we know that challenges. Right. Right. I mean, of course, that like one of the disadvantages or one of the challenges, right? I mean, it's really that we have very little land, right? And our land is so expensive, and so therefore that is a very, very difficult. I mean, for a startup, a small startup, because that really, I mean, most of the costs we might go into the rent. So that's why that it might also be that why that it is really not that easy for these small startup. I mean, that to grow and sustain. The advantage of Hong Kong, of course, we have a lot of things that we already talk about. But one thing that I think that is always the legacy part is that Hong Kong does have, it's a very small city, but we have 7 to 8 universities. And that, I mean, that if you look at all the universities, they're all producing quite a lot of research. And more importantly, producing a lot of the students, both PhD, master, and a lot of these students are coming from abroad. A lot of them from mainland China and also from other places. They're very talented, but the problem is that when they graduate, they don't have jobs. They have a lot of the knowledge, and that they can even, I mean, take the technology and knowledge they learn that they get from the lab, but they have no place, I mean, to apply. So that is something that hopefully that the Bureau, when they set up, can bridge the gap. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other question, idea? Yes, please. Name. Thank you.
I'm William Seal. I'm a part-time lecturer in Hong Kong U and doing some other
We
things.
love Hong Kong, you. That's okay.
Over the last half century, Hong Kong used to have a very successful position in global economy. And it is one of the international financial centers, and also used to be a gateway to China, and also is one of the 4 Asian dragons, or dragons in Asia. But today, we notice that the GDP is falling, fell behind Singapore, and also our neighbor, Macau, which is not good news to me and to us. And also we are seeing a lot of the exodus of talents, and also the land price, I think, according to recent reports, we are #1 in the world.
But it's going down, by the way.
Okay. And so today we realize that China is pushing ahead lots of things, such as the One Belt One Road country strategy, and also we realized that obviously there are some problems in other countries like the Americas and also in Europe. And Hong Kong also faced with problems, lots of problems like social problems or aging society problems. So with the academics and experts here today, I would like to hear from the expert advice from you guys. What is the role for Hong Kong in the coming decade under the blessing of China? What can be done to save Hong Kong to move forward and maintain her competitive position?
I have two answers. One, it is not really the topic of this conference. No. I'm sort of dead serious about that, because when we established the conference with the right partners, we specifically noted that we do not want to solve the problems of Hong Kong. And I'll tell you why, because it's not an interesting problem. Think about that. Hong Kong used to be 10 years ago 17% of China's economy. 10 years ago. You know how much it is now? Less than 2%. It's just a small city. That's it. And it's better we think that way if I'm wearing the Hong Kong hat. It's not a big deal, you know. If we don't do things, that's fine. Shenzhen will do it, Shanghai will do it, Taiwan will do it, Singapore will do it. It's very simple. So it is a very important point for the government of Hong Kong to understand, and I think they do. I think they do start on it. It's more important for the Legislative Council to understand that. That would be a good move. But at the end of the day, Hong Kong is a small city in China. That's it.
Be careful here. It's the most energetic. it's the most energetic city in China.
It's the most energetic.
It's my home, and I don't appreciate these comments.
And now that we have moves,
all right.
and everything is changing. Go ahead. Moose.
Yeah. You know, every weekend I'm in Sai Kung. A lot of islands are completely empty. All the houses from the fishermen are empty. Figure it out. There is an ability to take care of people. There are areas, but you see, the thing is, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where you are. This was the whole big thing with the Japanese. You know, the grandparents hate their grandchildren because the grandchildren don't want Japan to be number one, number two in the world. They just want to have good lives and be smart and kind of do things right. It goes back to the individual. So the Hong Kong nationals have to have pride, and they have to be proud of what they can achieve. Energetic, bright people, good people, you know, fit people, and just you know, but they need an infrastructure to be able to excel in, and it's the infrastructure that I'm looking at, and so, you know, and that's one of the things that you know, we're trying to kind of, when one needs to spend the time and think through. So you stated all the points, and Yesha's right, they're irrelevant. But what is relevant is what can Hong Kong do? And I'll tell you, Hong Kong has a sparkle that New York has. It has the jungles that are amazing, and it has the water that is stunning. So it can attract all the people it wants. Everybody that comes to Hong Kong loves this place. And so, you know, and we just need the infrastructure. It goes to the point you were making. Where's the system? Where's the structure? Where's the ecosystem?
Kelly, you want to add something for your point of view?
Yeah, just a perspective, if I may. I sympathize. I was sitting at a panel some time ago in a different place, and people were asking exactly the same question. How do we, in our place, create a sort of vibrant economy, create a high-tech economy, and because we've got our own problems? Well, until I came here to Hong Kong, I thought you had everything worked out for you. And now I see their problems. The other place I was sitting in a similar situation was actually Greece. Now, if you think you have problems, look at Greece. And they were sitting there. Now, Greece is not that much bigger than Hong Kong. It's 10 million people. I mean, let's put it. Except they have many more islands, of course. But what I want to tell you, the interesting part is they came out smiling because at the end of they were looking for something that will be identified with Greece. And of course, technology is hardly the first thing you think of. But then they came up to the notion that, through a whole process, that, you know, Greece is really the origin of Mediterranean food. And today, with the aging of population and the whole thing about health, So actually, you guys have invented, the key to quality living and quality nutrition. So why don't you do something about that? The world already believes you know the answer, so you might as well take it to the next step. And they said, okay, that's wonderful. How we do that? That's a separate issue. But, but it's that kind of process that says, I got these issues to deal with. I've got a legacy which I now need to transform to something new, and it's my problem to solve. And somehow people do that at the end of the day, or they leave.
Yeah. If I might add to that, well, I went to I went to a talk by the Consul General of Austria recently, and she was talking about smart cities and about how Vienna scored all the best prizes for the most livable, the best smart city in the world. And she was talking about how they did it, and she said, well, we actually concentrated on making the city livable for everybody. We focused on developing the city for citizens, on achieving the work-life balance and on achieving the objectives for the society, to make it better for people who actually live there, and to make it better, to make people want to come and live there. So they weren't concentrating on competing with others. They were looking around and saying, well, am I better than Singapore? Am I better than this, than Beijing, than this, than that? They were just making sure that they're happy within their own city, and this is what drove them to in the rankings. And at one point they said, well, and then at one point we were surprised that we're the first one as the most livable city in the world. And so I think that's one of the valuable lessons for Hong Kong. Stop looking around.
A valuable lesson for Hong Kong. I think Tel Aviv is a city did a very similar effort. Our dear friend Hilah was the head of what's called Global Tel Aviv, and they focused on basically quality of living and tourism and enabling startups to enjoy that. And it created really, in the competing cities between them and Herzliya and other places, they became our hub. So it's an interesting idea. And it is one of the potential, by the way, from a research point of view, potential strands that we're looking at, is how cities, which are becoming the core of what's happening, are going to create environment where it's going to be good for people to join us. I think it's a great comment.
I don't know how close we are to the end, but I would like just, okay, but I would like to make just one philosophical point is where I'm sitting, which is the London Business School, I get to see and talk to people from practically any country in the world. And one thing which is common to all of them is a very similar comment that you made. All of them are unhappy about their own country. The Danish are unhappy about the taxation. The guys in Cyprus could not identify, you talk about Greece, at least they got their Mediterranean food. The guys in Cyprus could not identify one thing they had that is unique to them. A country of 1.2 million, So, you know, you go country by country and they all talk about their difficulties, the tragedies and so on, let alone, you know, Europe today with all the immigrants and this on top of things. So the reason I'm saying this philosophical, because I'm remembering what many said, the Chinese wisdom that I'm getting, although I'm here only a few hours. And that's the fact that you should always be unhappy or not happy enough, because if you are happy enough, you don't try harder. So that's actually good, to always achieve and a bit complain and push others.
So that you always have the motivation, right?
Yes, yeah, please.
So, Yesha, I want to kind of follow up on your remark that Hong Kong has nothing to learn from Israel, or actually challenge this statement. So I heard a different version of your statement from you a while back, and you said that if Hong Kong or Asian countries wants to learn from Israel, they have to generate Israel's problems. I won't be too specific about that. But so clearly nobody wants to do that. So the big challenge is, how do you force yourself into a crisis without being in a real crisis? And Israel actually had a couple of those. It wasn't just the military situation. It was also the water situation that was mentioned, and agriculture, and and other issues. And I guess it's related to the comment that was mentioned before. I mean, clearly Hong Kong has challenges, and clearly other countries have challenges. It's just turning or defining them first as a near crisis situation, something that you want to solve locally, and the other one is that you don't want to buy outside solutions, and you want to use technology to do that. And I think this is a sort of a philosophical statement that a country can make, and then because I don't know if it's true or not, whether Israel had the option or not, or America had the option or not of using external resources to solve the problems. So it was a decision that we have to solve a problem and we have to do it on our own.
Just to
And
clarify,
money is no object, of course.
Just to clarify, I think Hong Kong is probably the best place in the world to create world-class innovation. And when I say that, I actually mean it. I'm spending much of my time here in Hong Kong because I think the potential is great. But it is the potential, it's not the actual. No, this is a very important point. That's why I'm here, because I'm valued most where I can uplift the potential. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm an academic from Australia. I wanted to ask a question about corporate venture capital. So there's a lot of countries we've talked about where there's not many VC funds or a lack of VC funding for startups, but there are large corporations. So Australia is one of those. To what extent do you think corporate venture capital could completely replace the traditional VC model and perhaps serve that purpose of facilitating startups?
I don't think it completely replaces. I mean, it doesn't address what has been raised so far by Yao or by the lady about Vienna, right? We still have those problems, right? Because, I mean, fine, a corporate wants to do something, but if the people don't want to work there, if they can't work there, if you can't get the talent, then the corporate is a corporate, right? I mean, look at the oil companies. You know, they cut their budgets ruthlessly, right? They'll shift it to where it works, and so the money is there. It's not going to replace another pool. The pools all coexist. Some countries or some areas might have different weightings of them, but the truth of the matter is, why was Silicon Valley what it is? Because it's a nice place to live. When you make a lot of money, you go live in Woodside. You're by the water, you're in the sunshine, and there's a whole infrastructure around you that supports you with jobs, with academic support, with research support, right? And so the corporates are an important element. They're not going to replace the others, but the essence of it is really creating an environment in which all of this can be nurtured by local funding from local pensions, by corporate activity, by individual activity. And that's the way I see it.
Let me add some data to your question. The history again, we gave tremendous amount of respect here all around to the corporations. And I was the first one to admit the major contribution to the large platform they generated. When it comes to corporate venture, the data is actually extremely negative. The performance and if venture capital is volatile, corporate venture capital is triple volatile. The main reason, and again, we are today a little bit clouded with Google Ventures, which is playing a major role and can fund, like VC, almost anything. Except for that, even Apple and others are not at that league in that sense, even not Intel traditionally. Well, the history is that most of the corporate venture platforms shut down, because this has been viewed as the free money, floating money, kind of a toy in the hands of the CEO. And when the company hits rough times, the first things to get rid of is what is luxury, and that was viewed as luxury. Okay, when one CEO has been replaced with another one, the first thing to do is to shut down their corporate ventures, because it's not core. They all go back to core. So God help us. We would like not to totally rely on these guys. They bring a lot of value, a lot of corporate knowledge, etc., etc., a lot of confusion, a lot of multiple objectives, a lot of conflict of interest. This model is very difficult model to work, okay? And the success of it is quite bleak. So we should have both and let people choose.
I just want to add, because it's a very good question, and you know why it's a good question, because we have an article on it that talks about corporate adventure in venture. And it is in the second issue of our venture finding. So, you know, and this is an historical perspective on that. Basically covers what Ellie said. There is a rise in the amount of money and the amount of flexibility and the amount of motives that they have these days. And Israel is at the core of this. We have 120 corporate MNCs, some of them with money, some of them without money, that are actually assisting things. There's another matter which I think relates to it. Some corporations are doing this without money by simply creating an accelerator or simply just a business development person that walks around and say, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what we want. And the entrepreneurs listen to that, say, okay, how about if we try that? And then they get early sale. So that cuts a little bit the VCs out of the picture because, you know, the smart entrepreneur just directly go to them.
Yeah, but they don't make as much money if they do not go to them. Yeah.
Yes, yes, but they make
Right.
it earlier, and the risk is lower. So, you know, some people, for them.
Right, but then if they're living in a nice environment like Vienna, then that's fine.
Yep.
But if you're living in Hong Kong and rents are expensive, then that doesn't work.
That's questions, concern, ideas, notions? Anything? Yes. Mike? Yes, please, coming up in the middle. Next time, don't sit in the middle.
So I'm Zen Nei from PolyU, Hong Kong PolyU. I'm Haitian's PhD student. So I'm just curious about why don't we focus a lot about the providing monetary support and intellectual support to cultivate venture capital and innovation in one region, but why don't we focus more on the living standard, the quality of life? Because actually I've been to Silicon Valley and I've been to Beijing and I've also been to Hong Kong here. So I compare to these three places. I think if I am a innovative person, I would like to live in Silicon Valley for in a long term because of its weather and the kind of living standards. So I want to know how can we overcome these kind of challenges for a city like Hong Kong, because it's quite small here.
We should do a startup that deals with the weather.
No weather, but
he's
the
talking
kind
the
of
same thing as the lady over there did with the smart area, right? Yeah, but you see, it's policy, my friend. It's policy. So it's him, right?
Okay, guys, last question or comment, anybody? When I say that, people think drink. Okay, Eric.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the talent issue. Well, I've been living in China for more than 20 years and in Hong Kong for 9 years.
Despite the fact that he's French.
But he looks 32 also.
Yeah, well, and actually I've been coaching and training Chinese from mainland, Chinese from Taiwan, Chinese from Hong Kong. What I can say to deepen the discussion you had earlier, mainland Chinese are a lot more able and willing to take risk because probably the society is very, very open to risk. And Hong Kong people actually, it's probably an historical reason, they have been a bit spoiled by the situation they had before the opening up of China. So, and there may also be some educational issues because, as you may know, in the Chinese traditional education system, you don't confront the lecturer or the professor. You just listen and you take notes. So that shapes the brain pattern.
We should bring some of that to Israel.
Yeah. So, and I think it's time for people in Hong Kong to realize that, as Yesha mentioned earlier, Hong Kong is just another Chinese city, but with different characteristics. At least for the next 30 plus years, Hong Kong still enjoy a different status. So there's a high time for Hong Kong to realize that and use that. And as you mentioned earlier, Hong Kong model could be California because you got everything here. You got nice environment, legal protections, and beautiful landscapes. I think it's just a mindset. Of course, government has some issue, but a mindset issue. And people need to revamp themselves and change themselves, and probably also learn from mainland Chinese on how to adapt to a new economic reality.
Excellent. So I think that's an excellent transition. Apropos, people have to change themselves because we are supplying materials to do that in the cocktail. Where are we going? What do we do now?
On the 9th floor, so you exit here.
So there's a mission going from here together. Winnie is going to take us to the elevator one by one. So we have lots of drinks, lots of stuff. Pick up this stuff, and that's the maximum amount. We're going to do a lot of schmoozing and talking with each other.
Before we go, I think Yesha did an amazing job here.
Oh, thank you. We have a whole session of things upstairs with the drinks.
Before you all go, anyone joining the tour tomorrow, please bring your bags along with you.
Yes, anybody joining the tour needs a sticker for the tour.